In 1983, a private jet carrying a cartel boss vanished over Central Africa. $10 million were on board. No bodies were ever found. This is what really happened. They called it the vanishing flight. August 14, 1983, a private Learjet 35 departing from Lagos, Nigeria, bound for Johannesburg. Aboard were 3 passengers, cartel head Eduardo El Toro Menendez, and 2 men listed as security contractors, Daniel Ross and Michael Harlow. The jet never reached its destination. At 10:42 a.m., the aircraft disappeared from radar over northern Zambia. 2 hours later, villagers near the Copperbelt reported hearing a low explosion and seeing smoke above the savannah. But when investigators reached the site days later, the wreckage didn't add up. There were no human remains. Only a torn fuselage, burned wiring, and a safe bolted to the floor. Empty. That safe, once sealed by Menendez's own hand, was said to contain $10 million in uncut bills. At the time, Nigeria's air authorities blamed mechanical failure. But whispers in the underworld told a different story. 2 thieves had turned on their employer mid-flight. A carefully planned heist, orchestrated 25,000 feet above the earth. To understand how such a plan could even exist, we have to go back to where it began, a nightclub in Lagos, spring 1983. Ross was an ex-U.S. paratrooper dishonorably discharged after a failed mission in Beirut. Harlow, a British mechanic turned smuggler, had been working as a ground technician for African private charters. They met by chance, or fate, in the dim red glow of the Avalon Club. I remember he said something about flying without rules, a bartender recalled in a 1993 interview. Ross wasn't drunk. He was watching people like he was measuring them. According to customs manifests recovered later, both men began traveling frequently between Nigeria, Ghana, and the Congo, often on small cargo planes carrying agricultural equipment. Menendez, meanwhile, was consolidating power. A Colombian national, he had shifted his operations to West Africa, using charter flights to move both product and cash through countries with weaker oversight. The August 14 flight was supposed to be routine, a move of cash reserves and documents to South Africa. But that morning, the pilot reported 2 additional passengers cleared through internal security. Those names were never logged by immigration. Archive, Lagos Air Traffic Log, August 14, 83, 9:12. Controller, Learjet 5XK, confirm 3 passengers? Pilot, affirmative. Menendez, Ross, Harlow, no additional crew. Controller, copy, good flight. From that moment, the trail goes dark until the crash report. But an independent aviation analyst, years later, reconstructed fragments from intercepted radio chatter. The Learjet had deviated from its flight path 20 minutes before disappearance, turning northwest instead of south. Either a hijacking or intentional reroute, said investigator Harold Klein in his 1989 testimony. The theory grew. Ross and Harlow planned to rob Menendez midair. They knew he traveled with cash. That much was no secret in the underworld. They also knew the jet carried parachutes, required by cartel protocol for emergency extraction. Around 10:30 a.m., over the dense forests of Zambia, the cabin pressure alarm triggered. According to the recovered flight recorder, the following was captured seconds before signal loss. Transcript: CVR fragment 10 hours, 31 minutes, and 42 seconds. Voice 1: Ross, we're doing this now, Mike. Open it. Voice 2: Harlow, he's armed. Voice 3: Menendez, you think you can rob me? You die up here. Sound of struggle, metallic clank, wind noise, followed by decompression tone. The recorder stopped at 10 hours, 32 minutes, and 7 seconds. The official search recovered no parachutes. But a week later, Zambian border police reported finding 2 torn nylon chutes and a duffel bag with water damage along the Luangwa River. Inside were traces of dollar bills, soaked and partially burned. No bodies. For years, the story became legend, a ghost heist where everyone died or disappeared. Insurance companies paid out nothing. The Menendez family declared Eduardo missing, presumed dead. But rumors persisted. Local hunters claimed to have seen white men living by the river in the late 80s. One villager, interviewed in 1990, said he traded tobacco for foreign money that smelled of smoke. When shown photographs decades later, he pointed to Ross and Harlow. They were not soldiers, he said. They were afraid of each other. The case file remained dormant until 1993. That's when a young South African journalist, Leah Carter, stumbled upon a classified customs ledger while researching a story on smuggling routes. The ledger mentioned Flight 5XK Recovery Fund, reclassified 1983 to 1991. Curious, Carter traced the entry to a forgotten hangar outside Lusaka. There, among rusted airplane parts, she found a sealed crate stamped with the Menendez cartel insignia. Inside, a Polaroid photograph. It showed three men standing in front of a small prop plane, smiling. The timestamp, Lusaka, 1984. One of them was unmistakably Eduardo Menendez. The other two, Ross and Harlow. That image changed everything. The world thought Menendez died in the crash. But now there was proof he survived, and perhaps orchestrated his own disappearance. Carter shared the photo with former investigator Klein, who immediately reopened the case. If that image is genuine, he told the press, then Menendez staged the crash to vanish, with help from his guards. As the investigation deepened, a new theory emerged. The heist wasn't against Menendez, it was with him. He had grown paranoid, convinced the cartel's higher circle plan to kill him. The $10 million was an escape fund, laundered cash meant to buy new identities. Ross and Harlow were hired to fake a crash, secure the money, and disappear together. But something went wrong. Archive note, investigation memo, February 9th, 93. Evidence suggests post-crash sightings near Lake Bangweulu. Locals report three men trading gold and cash for supplies between 1983 to 85, believed to be fugitives from Flight 5XK. By 1985, those men had vanished again. But in 1993, Carter's discovery brought global attention. Journalists flooded the region, hoping to find traces of the missing millions. In October that year, a satellite survey picked up metallic debris in the swamp near the old crash site, possibly remnants of a second aircraft. When divers reached it, they found a rusted lockbox lodged in mud. Inside, a map marked with coordinates, a few wet bundles of U.S. cash, and a handwritten note. If you read this, we were three. One stayed behind. No one ever confirmed whose handwriting it was. The note reignited the mystery. Did one of them die in the wilderness? Did Menendez betray his accomplices to ensure silence? One South African mercenary, speaking anonymously, claimed he met a bearded American near Kasama in 1987, carrying a Colt pistol and offering diamonds for food. He said the jungle took the other two, the man recalled. Said he was going to the coast. That was the last anyone heard of Daniel Ross. In late 1993, Leah Carter received a brown envelope at her Lusaka office. No return address. Inside was an audio cassette labeled simply, "For the record, 10 years later." When played, it revealed a crackling male voice. Transcript, cassette A, 1993. Male voice. "We thought we could vanish. 10 years isn't long enough. He wasn't who we thought he was. He said we'd all walk away rich. Then he jumped first." Silence. Then faint static. Male voice. "If this reaches you, Leah, tell them I'm still here. Tell them he's not dead." Experts later confirmed the voice likely belonged to Michael Harlow. But by then, he too had disappeared. The reappearance of that tape led investigators back to the marshlands. Carter, along with Klein, joined a joint search led by Zambian police. They found traces of an old campsite, rusted cooking tins, faded photos, an American dog tag bearing Ross's name. No bonus, just silence, swallowed by reeds. And yet, one clue remained buried deeper than any of them expected. While analyzing the lockbox map, Klein noticed faint pencil marks aligning with old mining coordinates near the Angolan border, a site used in the 1970s for diamond smuggling. If those marks were accurate, The fugitives might have followed the trail there, hoping to buy passage out of Africa. But the question no one could answer was simple. How did Menendez, the world's most wanted cartel leader, manage to live unseen for a decade? And what happened to the money, the 10 million that set everything in motion? By November 1993, Carter prepared her exposé for the Cape Herald. She titled it The Vanishing Flight, Menendez's Last Deal. But just days before publication, she received a call from an unknown number. "You're looking in the wrong jungle," a man's voice said, calm and deliberate. The plane wasn't the end. It was the beginning. That same night, her office was broken into. The Polaroid vanished. So did the cassette. 3 weeks later, a fisherman on the Congo River pulled a waterproof container from the mud. Inside were damp documents, stamped with the insignia of the Menendez cartel, and a fresh passport, issued under the name Miguel Hernandez. The photograph, a clean-shaven, older Menendez. The case that had started 10 years earlier had come full circle, but no one could explain how a man declared dead could hold a passport issued in 1992. Was he alive, watching the world chase his ghost? Or had someone else taken his identity, continuing the legend to cover their own escape? The answers lay somewhere beyond the swamp, buried under time and silence. If you want to know what they found next, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. When the Polaroid vanished from Leah Carter's office, she knew she had crossed a line that wasn't meant to be crossed. In the following weeks, her calls were tapped, her apartment searched twice by maintenance inspectors, and she began receiving blank envelopes with nothing but a single typed date inside. The first date read August 14th, 1983, the day of the crash. The second, November 4th, 1993, 10 years to the week since the investigation reopened. Something was being set in motion again, and Leah was at its center. She went into hiding in a remote Zambian village where she had once interviewed witnesses. It was there she met an old missionary named Father Benoit who remembered the night after the crash. 3 men came to the mission for water, he said, staring at the floor. One was bleeding from the shoulder. One carried a bag that jingled when he moved. The third stood back, watching. He didn't drink. That detail stayed with her. The one who didn't drink. It sounded like Menendez. Leah managed to track down a local hunter who claimed he helped bury a white man near the river months later. When she showed him old photos, he pointed at Harlow. He was sick. Fever took him, the man said. The others left before sunrise. The story fit the pattern. 3 men land, 1 dies, 2 vanish. But then came the breakthrough that changed everything. In early 1994, Carter's anonymous contact mailed her a film reel mark surveillance footage, Harare, 1988. The footage, grainy and silent, showed a man in sunglasses entering a bank in Zimbabwe under the name Miguel Hernandez. The date matched the issue year of the passport found in the container. He withdrew what appeared to be a safety deposit box. The guard at the desk saluted him. That man was unmistakably Menendez. The revelation shattered the assumption that he had remained hidden in the wilderness. He had returned to civilization, using forged papers, laundering money through legitimate African businesses. He hadn't disappeared. He had evolved. Leah flew to Harare under false credentials to follow the trail. She found the same bank, still operating under new management. When she presented a copy of the photo, the branch manager grew pale. "That man? He's a shareholder," he said. Or was. The name on the register, Hernandez Investments Limited, led to a mining company on the Angolan border. Leah contacted Klein, who by then had retired but couldn't stay away. "He's using the mines to wash his past," Klein said. Together, they assembled a small investigative team and drove north. The mines had been abandoned since 1991, but the records showed intermittent shipments of industrial stones long after closure. Someone was still operating there. On the 3rd day, they found a corrugated metal hut with a satellite antenna and generator. Inside, maps, radios, and an American passport issued to Daniel Ross, renewed in 1992. But Ross had been presumed dead. There was also a photograph of 3 men around a campfire, dated 1986, with "last night together" scrawled on the back. Ross, Harlow, and Menendez. That night, Leah and Klein camped outside the hut. Around 2 a.m., they heard an engine in the distance. A jeep approached slowly, its headlights off. A man stepped out wearing a desert scarf, moving with the stiffness of age. "Who's there?" Klein called out. The man froze. Leah switched on her flashlight, and for a second before he turned away, she saw his face. Older, bearded, but familiar. It was Ross. He fled into the dark before they could stop him. The next morning, they found footprints leading to an old airstrip half a mile away. The dirt was freshly disturbed, as if a small plane had taken off during the night. On the ground lay a discarded radio headset with a taped note. "Stop digging, Leah. He's already gone." Weeks later, a journalist from Johannesburg contacted Leah claiming to have information about Menendez's second life. He said Menendez had been seen in Cape Verde under a new name, running a private security company that specialized in disappearances. The journalist, however, vanished before the meeting could take place. When police checked his hotel room, they found it empty, except for a receipt from a hardware store in Lusaka, dated the same day Leah's office was broken into. Someone was cleaning up the past, piece by piece. Meanwhile, Interpol quietly reopened the Menendez case, naming both Ross and Menendez as fugitives. Satellite data placed possible aircraft landings on remote islands off the West African coast. "He could be anywhere," Klein admitted during his final interview. "But wherever he is, he's still playing the same game. Vanish, rebuild, vanish again." What struck Leah most was how the world moved on. $10 million lost in 1983 was now nearly forgotten, replaced by new scandals and wars. But for her, it wasn't just about money. It was about understanding how three men could erase themselves so completely that even time struggled to find them. She decided to visit the original crash site again. The savannah was quiet now, reclaimed by nature. Charred metal poked through the grass like bones. In the wreckage, she found a melted piece of glass with initials etched faintly, Dr. Ross. Beneath it, buried in soil, a fragment of cloth still smelling faintly of fuel. And under that, a rusted revolver, its serial number filed off. When she handed it to Klein for analysis, he called her 3 days later. "Leah," he said, his voice low, "the gun's Colombian manufacture. Registered to Menendez's bodyguard. Last seen in Bogota, 1982. The implication was chilling. Menendez hadn't hired Ross and Harlow. They'd been sent to him, possibly by his own cartel, to ensure his death. But something changed in the air that day. Perhaps he convinced them to switch sides, to stage the crash together, promising wealth and freedom. Maybe they all believed the lie until it was too late. In 1995, a fisherman discovered skeletal remains near the Luangwa River. Dental records later confirmed they belonged to Michael Harlow. In his tattered jacket pocket was a notebook wrapped in wax. Inside, written in faded ink, "He jumped before us. Said we'd meet at the strip. We never saw him again." That entry, dated 1983, proved Menendez abandoned them. Leah published her findings in the Cape Herald under the headline, "10 Million and a Ghost." The story sparked international attention, but still, the biggest question remained. If Menendez lived, where did he go after 1988? 2 years later, a new lead surfaced. A pilot arrested in Namibia confessed to flying an older Colombian man and a white mercenary to Brazil in 1993. The older man carried 2 leather cases and paid in diamonds. The pilot identified him as the man from the famous Polaroid. The mercenary? Described as American, late 40s, scar on his chin. Ross. From there, the trail went cold again. Until 1998, when a customs officer in Manaus reported an unusual import manifest. One crate labeled engineering equipment, shipped from Luanda. The consignee, Hernandez M. The crate never reached its destination. It vanished mid-transport on the Amazon River. Rumors persist that inside it was the remaining money, sealed away to avoid detection. But others claim it carried something far more valuable, evidence tying Menendez's cartel to European financiers. No one knows for sure. Leah retired in 2001, but the case never left her. In her last recorded interview, she said, There's a pattern to men like him. They don't disappear because they're ghosts. They disappear because we stop looking. Then she smiled and added, but someone always keeps looking. That someone was a young filmmaker, Adrian Cole, who in 2013 began producing a documentary about Flight 5XK. During filming, he discovered newly declassified U.S. satellite photos from August 1983 showing parachutes descending not over Zambia, but 200 kilometers north across the border in the Congo Basin. The coordinates led him to an overgrown airstrip still visible on satellite imagery. When a joint crew excavated the site in 2014, they found fragments of parachute nylon, a metal buckle, and, most importantly, a small box containing a gold ring engraved EM 1977. Menendez's wedding band. DNA tests confirmed traces of human skin cells matching his blood type. That was the first physical proof he hadn't escaped unscathed. Perhaps he died there after all. But then came one final twist. In 2017, a bank in Montevideo reported dormant offshore accounts under the alias Miguel Hernandez, reopened briefly to transfer funds to a charity in Bogota supporting families of missing pilots. The signature on the wire transfer matched Menendez's handwriting. That single transaction reignited debate among law enforcement and journalists alike. Was he still alive, aged and hidden, perhaps feeling the weight of ghosts he left behind? Or was it one of his few loyal men, keeping the myth alive? The heist of 1983 remains unsolved in the strictest sense. $10 million never recovered. 3 men who tried to outsmart a world built on betrayal. 1 jet that fell, and 1,000 lies that rose from its ashes. When asked why she still cared after decades, Leo once answered quietly, "Because every time I hear a small plane overhead, I wonder if somewhere one of them is still flying." Today, deep in the archives of the South African Bureau of Investigation, the Flight 5XK file sits sealed under classified, ongoing. On the cover, in faded pen, someone has written, "He jumped first." What do you think? Was justice ever truly served? Or did the ghost of 1983 win again? Leave your thoughts in the comments.